When Ben Affleck was cast as Batman, the reaction was complicated. Some people were excited, others were furious, and most were just curious. But despite appearing in multiple DC films, one thing that never actually happened was that Ben Affleck never got his own solo movie. Hello everyone and welcome back to AustinPlus commentary, where today we have got another What If, and it is a very interesting one and I like it. And it is, what if Ben Affleck actually had his own Batman movie in the DCEU? And I really liked Ben Affleck as a Batman. I know a lot of people didn't, but I really did. However, I do know there's some people that goes, he would have been a lot better if he had his own movie, and I completely agree. So, let's discuss what would the film be if he did have his own Batman movie, and how would it impact the DCEU? Would we still have James Gunn running it now? Let's find out. Ben Affleck's Batman actually surprisingly stood out in terms of many other Batmans before him because he was immediately different from very previous versions. He was older, heavier, and visibly worn down by years of crime fighting. But this wasn't a Batman just starting out. This was a Batman who had lost his faith, lost partners, and his moral certainty. Physically, this was the most imposing live-action Batman that we'd ever seen, like, since The Dark Knight. Granted, that was actually a few years after. But thematically, it opened the door to exploring a version of Bruce Wayne's that was been shaped by regret rather than hope, which is such a big contrast to what we've seen before. Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, George Clooney, including Christian Bale. Everything was so different with this Batman that I think it could have worked. Now, for those who don't know, there was a Batman movie in development, but the setup really was never paid off well. Because after Batman v Superman quietly laid the groundwork for a solo story, Robin was dead, Gotham was more brutal, and Batman had crossed lines that he once was sworn never to cross. But these weren't background details, they were story hooks that they were begging to be explored. A solo movie could have examined how Bruce reached that point, and more importantly, whether he could actually come back from it, be the regular Batman that we all know and love today, rather than the dark, more brutal and absolute version. Instead, those threads were just left hanging. I think they should bring Ben Affleck back. Just, if James Gunn did him right, I think they should bring him back, if he's willing to. Now, for the potential rumoured direction of Ben Affleck's Batman film, early reports suggested that he was going to have his own film, but it would be a lot smaller, darker, and more psychological. It would have focused on Bruce Wayne such as like Batman, with Gotham feeling grounded and dangerous rather than like mythic. The rumoured villain was Deathstroke, who wasn't a world-ending threat, but really a personal one. A story that was based on strategy, paranoia, and mental warfare would have been a sharp contrast to the spectacle-heavy direction DC eventually took. Based on the strategy, paranoia, and mental warfare stuff, I don't know if people know this, but they did have a concept art for Scarecrow in the DCEU. Perfect person to just chuck in there as a good addition, who would have set the foundation for a both modern and old Batman, like the one he was before. So we met Deathstroke, say, when he was just heading into the world, but then he realized Deathstroke is an assassin, blah 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 blah. And obviously you have Jonathan Crane, who is psychological. We didn't see much of Arkham, but having all of this in like one film would have been so small, but so much for the DCEU and so much for his story that he just never got. His story, without a doubt, would have been to do with like consequences, Robin's death, and everyone else that he had lost. An Affleck-led Batman movie could have had just basically been about consequences. Bruce's violence, his isolation, and his obsession would finally catch up to him. Deathstroke just challenged Batman physically. He'd expose Bruce's weaknesses and force him to confront the damage that he had caused. That's where the psychological stuff comes in. Now, this version of Batman didn't need to save the world, he just needed to save himself from that like trauma, that like psychological aspect. Like, everything works in a circle, everything's a cycle, and every little thing links to another. It wouldn't have to be a big spectacle. It could just be so grounded, which is that's why the Batman movie with Robert Pattinson worked so well. Now, when we are comparing this idea to other Batman movies, most Batman movies focused on his origin or escalation. Spoiler alert, his parents fucking die.
What? What the fuck? Well, no fucking shit.
Now, this one could have actually focused on reckoning, no learning how to be Batman, just dealing with what being Batman has cost him. That alone would have set it apart. A slower, more introspective Batman film centered on guilt, aging, and legacy would have felt more fresh in a genre crowded with reboots. Now, if we're talking about this film and its impact on the DCEU, there's the thing, it shouldn't have a big impact. A successful Affleck Batman movie could have actually stabilized the entire DC universe. Sort of. Batman would have become an emotional anchor instead of just a crossover character. Other stories could have branched off a grounded Gotham rather than a rushing toward a spectacle. Instead, DC pivoted repeatedly, leaving Affleck's Batman just stuck in like the same place over and over. Ultimately, it never really happened because of creative differences, studio pressure, and the broader instability of the DCEU itself. Because all of these played a role, and obviously the downfall of DCEU. But as DC kept changing direction, Affleck reportedly stepped back, and the opportunity just quietly disappeared. And what could have been a defining Batman story just became another what if in a franchise that was full of what ifs. So, what if Ben Affleck had his own Batman movie? It likely would have been one of the most unique Batman films that were ever made. Not louder, not bigger, just darker, more personal and more focused. Ben Affleck's Batman wasn't a failure, it just was unfinished. We might have seen a version of Batman defined by consequence and introspection instead of spectacle. And while we never know how it would have turned out, one thing is clear, we didn't just lose a movie. We lost a story that had something genuinely different to say. But without further ado, folks, that is the end of today's video. I hope you all enjoyed it. And if you have any other what if stories or ideas, please leave a comment in the comments below. But without further ado, hope you have an amazing day as always. And I'll see you on the next one, folks. Bye.
Yeah.